Recording in progress.
Welcome back to HalalawaYahawah, Spirits in the Waters and the Blood. I'm your favorite Hebrew Israelite, Wayne. Most definitely welcome. Welcome back. Today I want to address or talk about the topic of when individuals see or individuals try to explain the existence of the Heavenly Father. So a lot of individuals put forth claims such as they go with science, others faith-based, and then you have others that are just flat out atheists. And them they speak foolishly by thinking that there's no such thing as a Heavenly Father. When there is a Heavenly Father that does exist, it's one creator, it's one being, it's one energy that created it all, and most definitely is Yahweh. Most definitely, Tawada, Tadaraba, Orthawada, Yahweh, Bahashim, Hamashiach, Yahweh, Vain Barakata, Ruach, Kodasheka, Etlo Yakalat, that's it. Words can't explain what the Father, my love for the Father. So with that being said, I just wanted to go ahead and start off by saying, please take the time out to like, share, subscribe. It's free. And plus it helps with the frequency of being or promoting videos. I posted one video and I guess the frequency of it, I saw it was high, so therefore it started to show up in the algorithms on the side. So I'm thinking that YouTube didn't fully shadow me. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going back into the creation of the Father, or not the creation of the Father, but does the Father really exist? All right, so with that being the topic of the subject, a lot of individuals try to disprove. Me, myself, I've always known that it was something spiritual. I always known that it was a connection to everything in the world that in which everything evolved around with, down to the rotation. Everything has a certain frequency. Mathematics is applied to everything, even our speech, our reading, everything. So mathematics can basically, it's a powerful tool. And especially in trying to prove or in order to talk about the certain existences, you look at probabilities that could be, and then you gather all of the information on probabilities that this may not be. So with this particular state, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the Father through a scientific eye, but using quantitative literacy. Quantitative literacy, that's evaluating the Father's existence through a quantitative state, which is a form of mathematics. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and get this popping. Now with this, like I said before, is to start off with, just to give a clear example of when we talk about the Father, we talking about an individual that's this is actually a satellite picture, but I mean one of the space hub, one of the James Webb, or one of the telescopes or whatever took a photo of the galaxy, and while it was at its furthest peak, and therefore we see this, the sun and the earth and then all of this that's going around inside of our universe, which is called the universe. Some believe that the universe is infinite, and what better way to look at something that's in an infinite form than to look at it through mathematics. So to keep it going, I won't ramble on and on. I'm just gonna go ahead and, I guess, start this lesson. So now we go to, I'm gonna take you to the next slide. What is quantitative literacy? Quantitative literacy is the ability to use mathematical computations or statistical methods to solve real world problems across different disciplines. It also involves a familiarity Salathia, with the research methods that are used to gather and manipulate data and to view their validity with a critical eye so you could disprove it. It expands numeracies to include use of mathematics in dealing with change, quantitative relationships, and uncertainties. Some examples of quantitative literacy math courses are college algebra, statistics, and contemporary mathematics. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions. And please leave me questions down in the comment section. Most definitely, I honor those. I like those. They're interesting, and plus it helps with the frequency and show your support. Or if you have questions in general, then please ask, because I'll be much obliged or happy to help. So then we go to right here. This is according to science. God does not exist. Let me move this up so you don't think I'm infusing. Learn religion, atheism, and agnosticism. Well, according to science, God does not exist. This is an atheist perspective by August Klein. Let's see who he is. August Klein, a former regional director for the Council of Secular Humanism, writes and lecture extensively about atheism and agnosticism. Okay, so now let's go on. He starts out in a debate over whether God exists. We have theses on the one side, atheists on the other side, and in the middle, science. Atheists claim there's scientific proof that God is not real. This thesis, on the other hand, insists that science, in fact, has been unable to prove that HalalawaYahawah, or God, does not exist according to atheists. However, this position depends upon a mistaken understanding of the nature of science and how science operates. Therefore, it is possible to say that scientifically God does not exist, just as science discounts the existence of myriad and other alleged beings, other deities. What science can prove and cannot prove. To understand why HalalawaYahawah does not exist, or HalalawaYahawah to them that does not exist, is a legitimate scientific statement. It's important to understand what the statement means in the context of science. In the context of science. When scientists say HalalawaYahawah does not exist, they mean something similar to when they say ether does not exist. Physical powers do not exist, or life does on the moon does not exist. All such statements are shorthand for a more elaborate and technical explanation, which is that this alleged entity, HalalawaYahawah, has no place in any scientific equation, plays no role in any scientific explanation, cannot be used to predict any event, does not describe anything or force that has yet been detected and there are no models of the universe in which its presence is either required, productive, or useful. what should be most obvious about the more technically accurate statement is that it is absolute. It isn't absolute. That what should be most obvious about the more technically accurate statement is that it isn't absolute. It does not deny for all time any possible existence of the entity or force in question. Instead, it's a provisional statement denying the existence of any relevance or reality that the entity or force based on what we currently know. Religious thesis may be quick to size up this and insist that this demonstrates that science cannot prove that HalalawaYahawah does not exist, but that requires far too strict of a standard for what it means to prove something scientifically. Scientifically, or scientific proof against HalalawaYahawah. Now, this is an atheist, or coming from an atheist perspective. One of the individuals who speaketh foolishly. In HalalawaYahawah, the failed hypothesis, how science shows that HalalawaYahawah does not exist, Victor J. Stringer offers the scientific argument against the existence of HalalawaYahawah. Hypothesize a HalalawaYahawah who plays an important role in the universe. Assume that HalalawaYahawah has specific attributes that should be or should provide objective evidence of his existence. Look for such evidence with an open mind. If such evidence is found, conclude that HalalawaYahawah may exist. If such objective evidence is not found, conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that HalalawaYahawah with these properties does not exist, and HalalawaYahawah of those properties do not exist. This is basically how science would disprove the existence of any alleged entity. If HalalawaYahawah exists, there should be concrete evidence of his existence, not faith, but tanglement, or tangible, measurable, consistent evidence that can be predicted and tested using a scientific method. If we fail to find that evidence, then HalalawaYahawah cannot exist as defined. Certainly and doubt, certainly, or certainly. Salat. Oops, wrong button. Let me go back. Well, I got distracted. Go back. Okay, I'll go back. Certainty and doubt is in science. Of course, nothing in science is proven. Nothing in science is proven or disproven before or beyond a shadow of a doubt. Any possible doubt. In science, everything is provisional. Being provisional is not a weakness or a sign that a conclusion is weak. Being provisional is a smart, pragmatic tactic because we can never be sure what will come across when we round the next corner. This lack of absolute certainty is a window through which many religious theses try to slip their HalalawaYahawah, but that's not a valid move. In theory, it may be possible that someday we will come across new information that will lead us to the future, or to further explore the HalalawaYahawah hypothesis. If the evidence described in the above argument were found, if the evidence described in the above argument were found, for example, that would justify and would justify a rational belief in the existence of the sort of God or sort of HalalawaYahawah under consideration. It wouldn't prove the existence of such a God beyond all doubt, though, because belief we still have to be provisional. It may also be possible that the same could be true of an infinite number of other hypothetical beings and supernatural forces, such as Zeus or Odin, Christians or Hinduism. Every possibility of HalalawaYahawah or gods is up for exploration. What does it mean to exist? Finally, for such a proposition as HalalawaYahawah exists to have meaning to science, we need to define what exists. And in this case means when it comes to HalalawaYahawah or a series of HalalawaYahawah, their existence is dependent on evidence that they have had continue to have an impact on the universe. In order to prove impact on the universe, there must be measurable and testable events that could best or only be explained by whether this HalalawaYahawah is. We are hypothesizing about this HalalawaYahawah that we are hypothesizing about. Believers must be able to present a model of the universe in which some HalalawaYahawah is either required, productive, or useful. This is obviously not the case. Many believers work hard trying to find a way to introduce their HalalawaYahawah into science explorations, but none have succeeded. No believer has been able to demonstrate or even strongly suggest that there are any events in the universe that require a supernatural being to explain. Okay, creation, how about that for one? Instead, these consistently failing attempts end up reinforcing the impression that there is no nothing for HalalawaYahawah to do, no role for them to play, and no reason to give them a second thought. So far, everyone who has tried to scientifically prove that HalalawaYahawah exists has failed. While it's technically true that this doesn't mean that no one ever will succeed. This technically doesn't mean that no one will succeed. Key phrase or key thought. It is also true that in every other situation where such failures are so consistent, we don't acknowledge rational or even serious relations or reasons to bother believing. So then some of them lose, you get a lot of people that get bugged out with a lot of the different, they get bugged out with different beliefs, such as the disciples weren't people of color. They get bugged out about the Savior was of color. They get bugged out, start lying, and they read other books, and then they get confused and start thinking that giants are 6,000 feet tall. And then they come back with other falseologies, and this is called being tossed to and fro. So instead of sticking to the word where your mind is, you can find a root or a foundation or a base for your house of belief. Then you take everything, you compare it to the word. So that's what I basically did. I took quantitative literacy and I compared it to the word. So did another scientist. All right, so I'm gonna keep on going. All right, understanding Dell's incompleteness theorem. All right, now this is a particular where Goodell looks at the Father's existence from a supernatural stance, using quantitative literacy. All right, now this person is trying to understand. He's like, Goodell, he ran across the formula, right? So now he's trying to understand how this Goodell uses his incompleteness theory or theorem. I'm confused about the self-referential part of Goodell's incompleteness theorem. I tried reading this, but I don't understand what the F sub Y17 means, even after reading the definition of the substitution formula and why they keep substituting everything. One of the parts that troubled me most is how Goodell managed to create self-referential statements using logic symbols. I watched this video, Math's Fundamental Law, which states that the symbol representation of the supposed self-referential statement is this statement here, which was the golden number, G. All right. He asked a chat. I asked Chat GPT to break down the symbols, and I don't think it is accurate. It told me, and so he goes through, and he's still having serious problems about understanding Golden's theory of incompleteness. The system of quantitative literacy that Golden used in order to break it down. So, this is a obvious situation or example of the Father purposely blinding an individual. He sees it, he can't read it, what he's seeing. He can't even understand what he's reading. So now we go to, and he's trying to use math in order to prove if the Father exists or not. Okay, so or understand the existence of math, or how math can be used and applied, through Golden's form of quantitative literacy. You're going to be confused. Now, this is Alan Rish. This is the best. Does he have any information? I never checked on that. Oh, no, he just has. Okay, so he gave the most accurate conclusion to Golden's incompleteness theory. So basically, he reprimands him first, and then he goes and gives him some positive feedback. So like I said before, this is the best explanation I can hear, or the best point that I heard of an individual other than Golden's himself. I took quantitative literacy, so I understand what quantitative literacy is. It could apply to your regular life. You take a set of premises, and then you have a set of premises that you look at the frequency of the premises. If they all pointed to a positive, then your hypothesis has a chance to be positive, and you could take inductive and deductive material and add it to your premises, basically statistical or actual written information, literal information, and then you use these, and like I said before, to debunk, debunk, or come to a conclusion that more study is required. All right, so now he goes on to say you're going to be confused by Golden's proof and its applications. It is unavoidable. Golden's results is almost designed to be confusing. How can a mathematical statement talk about itself? What does that even mean? Questions like these and various interchanging layers of interpretations are definitely going to throw you for a while. Throw you for a while. Have you confused for a long time. Just like a lot of people with the Bible in which they're reading, and then they get confused and confounded, or they get confused in the words, and then they start making invalid claims of what the word is saying, and then they end up confounded. But then you have some that's confounded, but they too foolish to admit they're confounded. I'll keep going. Don't use ChatGPT for this. ChatGPT has no incentive to make correct statements. All it knows how to do is look professional and plausible. This may be good enough, like sort of like that guy was watching. What's his name? I can find him too. What is that guy's name? I don't know, but a white guy I should know his name, but anyway, I try it. All right, so anyway, Vocab Malone, just like Mr. Vocab Malone. He just tries to watch one of his shows the other day, and outside of him on somebody else's show, and he's like a Hebrew Israelite police. He knows everything about it. So if you're of the faith, trust me, he might be in your closet. All right, so then the only thing that he tried, oh, hold on. All he knows how to do is look professional and plausible. And this may be good enough in some fields, but it is not in math. And ChatGPT has been observed to lie, just like Vocab Malone. Lie about mathematics and the word. Oh, I forgot to give positive advice for the layman who stops that Golden's Esther Bach and internal golden braid is pretty much the gold standard for Golden's explanation for further mature mathematicians. While there are Golden's actual 2 papers are actually surprisingly readable. Golden himself wrote 2 papers that are surprisingly readable, but intrinsically confusing at the same time. See above. They are in German, but they have been translated pretty well. Then there's an enormous amount of secondary literature, literary review. Any search for Golden's incompleteness theorem will come up with tons of hits. So you heard me say now, but with tons of hints, you'll find out tons of information on Golden's theory. But we'll walk through it right here. Scientific America. Mathematics. Can God be proven mathematically? All right, some mathematicians have sought a logical proof for the existence of HalalawaYahawah. Here's what they discovered. Okay, here we go. Who would have thought about HalalawaYahawah as a part topic for an essay about mathematics? Don't worry. The following discussion is still solidly grounded within an intelligible scientific framework. But the question of whether HalalawaYahawah can be proved mathematically is intriguing. In fact, over the centuries, 7 mathematicians have repeatedly tried to prove the existence of a divine being. They range from Blaise Pascal, René Descartes in the 17th century, and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz in the 18th century to Kurt Golden in the 20th century. When was this written? To Kurt Golden in the 20th century. This was written by Manon Bischoff on October 4th. 2022. All right, so on 2022, by Kurt Goulden in the 20th century, whose writings on the subject were published as recently as 1987, and probably the most amazing thing in a preprint study first posted in 2013, and algorithmic proof wizard checked Golden's logical chain of reasoning and found it to be undoubtedly correct. They put a computer on Golden's logic chain of reasoning and found it to be undoubtedly correct. His mathematics now finally disproved the claims of all atheists. But just like with vocab Malone and reading it for itself, you think they really understand it? I doubt that. As you probably already suspected, it hasn't. It hasn't what? It hasn't changed the ideas of atheists. Golden was indeed able to prove that the existence of something which he defined as divine necessarily follows from certain assumptions, but whether these assumptions are justified can be called in doubt. For example, if I assume that all cats are tricolored and know that tricolored cats are almost always female, and then I can conclude almost all cats are females, even if the logical reasoning is incorrect. This, of course, does not hold, for the very assumption that all cats are tricolored is false. If one makes statements about observable things in our environment, such as cats, one can verify them by scientific investigation. But if it is about the proof of a divine existence, the matter becomes a little more complicated. While Leibniz, Descartes, and Gödel relied on an ontological proof of HalalawaYahawah, in which they deduced the existence of a divine being from the mere possibility of it by logical inferences. I was going to say logical framework, but logical inferences. Pascal in 1623 through 1662 chose a slightly different approach. He had analyzed the problem from the point of view of what might be considered today as game theory, and developed the so-called Pascal Wager. To do this, he considers two possibilities. First, God exists. Second, God does not exist. Then he examines the consequences of believing or not believing in God after death. If there is a divine being and one believes in it, one ends up in paradise. Otherwise, one goes to hell. If, on the other hand, there is no God, nothing else happens, regardless of whether you are a righteous or religious or not individual. The best strategy, Pascal contends, is to believe in HalalawaYahawah. At best, you end up in paradise. In the worst scenario, nothing happens at all. If, on the other hand, you don't believe, then in the worst case, you end up in hell. Pascal's thoughts are comprehensible by the reference of scenarios from religious writings and do not represent a proof for the existence of a superior being. They only say that one should join the faith based on opportunities. Sort of like the ontological approaches deal with the nature of being are more convincing, even if they will most likely not change the minds of the atheists and vocab. Theologians and philosophers and Anselm of Canterbury in 1033 through 1109 put forth his idea at the beginning of the last millennium. He describes HalalawaYahawah as being beyond whom nothing greater can be thought. But if HalalawaYahawah does not exist, then one can imagine something greater, namely a being beyond which nothing greater can be contemplated. You can't even think of the power. That's just the way it is. You can't think of the Father's. You can't stop the Father's power. He is. All right, this assumption that HalalawaYahawah does not exist must be wrong. All right, this of course is absurd. All right, let's go back a little bit more. But like HalalawaYahawah, this being also exists and exhibits a property of ultimate greatness. This, of course, is absurd. Nothing can be greater than the greatest thing that one can imagine. Accordingly, the assumption that HalalawaYahawah does not exist must be wrong. It took a few centuries for this idea to be revised, but none other than Descartes in 1596 through 1650, supposedly unaware of Anselm's writings, he provided an almost identical argument for the divine existence of a perfect being. Leibniz 1647 through 1767 took up the work a few decades later and found fault in it. The Socrates he contended had not shown that the perfect properties of certain entities ranging from triangles to HalalawaYahawah are compatible. Leibniz went on to argue that perfection could not be properly investigated. Therefore, it could never be disproved that perfect properties unite in one being. Thus, the possibilities of a divine being must be real. So, based on Anselm's and Descartes argument, I want to call him Socrates so bad, but Descartes arguments, it necessarily follows that HalalawaYahawah exists. From a mathematical point of view, however, these experiments became really serious only through Gödel's efforts. This is not too surprising. The scientists had already turned the subject on its head at the age of 25 by showing that mathematics always contains true statements that cannot be proven. That mathematics contain true statements that cannot be proven. In doing so, he made use of logic. This same logic also enabled him to prove the existence of HalalawaYahawah. Take a look at these 12 steps made up of a set of axioms, theorems, and definitions. Axiom, theorem, definition. Then axiom 3, once you get the conclusion of the first go around, then you apply that to theorem, then you come up with a definition, then axiom 4, and so forth. At first glance, they seem cryptic, but one can go through them step by step to follow Gödel's thinking. He starts with an axiom and an assumption. An axiom is an assumption. In other words, if phi has the property of p, and from phi always follows psi. If phi always follows from start over. I haven't taken this course in a while, so I'm doing. It's like a refresher to me. Salathia. He starts with the axiom and assumption. In other words, if phi has the property P and from phi always follows psi, then psi always has the property P. From simplicity, we can assume that P stands for the positive. For example, if a fruit is delicious, a positive property, then it is also fun to eat. Therefore, the fun of eating is also a positive property. The second axiom further states a framework for P. If the opposite of something is positive, then that something must be negative. Thus, Goodell has divided a world into black and white. Either something is good or bad. It exists or it don't. For example, if health is good, then a disease must necessarily be bad. With these two premises, in quantitative thinking, with these two premises, Goodell can derive his first theorem. He can derive his first theorem. If phi is a positive property, then there is possibility that an x with property phi exists. That is, it is possible for positive things to exist. Now the mathematicians turns from the first time to the definition of a divine being. X is divine if it possesses all positive properties of phi. The second axiom ensures that an HalalawaYahawah defined in this way cannot have negative characteristics, otherwise one would create a contradiction, because he is almighty, perfection, righteous. Now, like I said before, Salathia, I took quantitative literacy, and so did another guy, and applied it to the word. And then if it's proofread, if an idea is proofread by the Father, then all corrections have been made. The third axiom statement that divinity is a positive characteristic. This point is not really arguable because divinity combines all positive characteristics. Divinity provides or combines all positive characteristics. Salafi. And this chord is getting on my nerves, but anyway. The second theorem now becomes, okay, yeah, I read that. The second theorem now becomes a bit more concrete by combining the third axiom, divinity is positive, and the first theorem, that there is a possibility that something positive exists. A being X could exist that is divine. Yahawah is divine. Goodell's goal is to show in the following steps that HalalawaYahawah must necessarily exist in the framework that has been laid out. For this purpose, he introduces in the second definition the essence phi of an object X characteristic property that determines all other characteristics. An illustrative example is puppy-like. If something has the property, it is necessarily cute, fluffy, and clumsy. Not my puppy was crazy. Anyway. Uh, the fourth axiom doesn't seem too exciting at first. It simply states that if something is positive, then it is always positive, no matter the time, situation, or place, being puppy-like to tasting good. For example, are always positive for whether during the day or at night in Hildbala or Heidelberg, Germany, or Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. Godel can now formulate the third theorem. If a being X is divine, then divinity is its essential property. If being X is divine, then divinity its essential property. This makes sense because if something is divine, it possesses all positive characteristics, and thus the properties of X are fixed. The next step relates to the existence of a particular being. If somewhere at least one being, Y, possesses the property of phi, which is the essential property of X, then X also exists. This is if anything is puppy-like, then puppies must exist. According to the fifth axiom, existence is a positive property. According to the fifth axiom, existence is a positive property. I think most people will agree with that. From this, one can now conclude that HalalawaYahawah exists because this being possesses everything positive. Every positive property and existence is positive. As it turns out, Goodell's logical inferences are all correct. Even computers have been able to prove that. Nevertheless, the inferences have also drawn criticism. Like Vocab Malone. Clown. Alright. Besides the axiom, which of course can be questioned. Why should a world be divisible into good and evil? Why should a world be divided into good and evil? Goodell does not give more details about what properties or what a positive property is. It is true. He said it's divinity, the being divine. It is true that by means of the definition and axioms, one can describe that the set P mathematically, if a property belongs to the set, its negation is not included. The set is self-contained. The fact that the essence of the set has only the characteristics of the set is itself an element of the set. The set always has the same element, independently of the situation. In this case, the situation is the mathematical model in which the set is contained. In a mathematical model which the set is contained, existence is part of the set. If phi is part of the set, then the property of having phi has the essence of the set is also contained in the set. But all of this does not ensure that the set is unique. There could be multiple collections that satisfy, or multiple premises that satisfy the requirements. For example, as logications have shown, um, it is possible to construct cases where, by Golden's definitions, there are more than 700 divine entities that differ in essence. Hold on, let me say that again. Doesn't the word point that out? It is possible to construct cases where Golden's definitions, there are more than 700 divine entities that differ in essence. That's how you get the different spirits. Thus, this does not settle the final question of the existence of one or more divine beings. Whether mathematics is really the right way to answer this question is itself questionable, even if thinking about it is quite exciting. This article originally appeared in Spectrum der Wissenschaft and was reproduced with permission. Fair use for all content that I use. And then he gives a little information. You can follow them. Scientific America. So basically, I'm just going to go ahead and end that right there. I'm just going to give my hypothesis or conclusion of what we just went through. All praises to the Most High. Okay, so with that being said, that if they're saying that if it's a divinity and the divinity possesses strong characteristics that tie in mathematically through the quantitative thought pattern in which premises align to where they have this one P or X exists because X possesses the properties of P, of Phi, and Psi, and most definitely you go through the particular equation and it breaks all of it, or you're applying mathematically to one particular point to where the rational or the conclusion of your premises or the buildup of the framework of your premises all formulate and support or debunks a hypothesis. So therefore, what the word tells you is that our Father for a fact is divine. Our Father for a fact is divine. The Hamashiach, Yahawah was anointed. Yahawah was anointed. So with this being, then it says that there were messengers that the Father used. Some ignorantly call them angels that the Father used. Messengers. Then you also different demonic spirits, the spirits of legion. Well, you know what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say the different spirits or the different Elohim that the word tells you that's in existence, but only one divine entity that shared the properties of positivity and was considered to be divine. Alright, so with that, I must go ahead and say shalom, shalom, baraka, mishpacha, peace and blessings, baraka to you all. Hope you enjoy this beautiful day. Please take the time out to like, share, subscribe. Helps with the frequency, and most of all, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you stuck through, can science prove there's a God? Then most definitely all love to you. With that, I want to say HalalawaYahawah, Hashem Hamashiach Yahweh Uveim Barakatah Ruach Chodeshecha. Stay peace. Stay prayed up. One. Echad.